if you just use an email address to sign up on a website right now, there's two things that are happening that you probably aren't aware of. The do not call list is like, it's almost worthless. If it was optimized and someone spent time caring, it would go a lot further. It would do a lot more good. It's just not doing as much good as it could. There's not really a lot of good that I've ever seen come out of the international, telemarketing world. 4, 5, 6,000 lawsuits a year that happen from the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. That's just what gets filed. There's probably tens of thousands of people that will pay a fine just so that they don't have to try to, defend themselves, even though they didn't do anything wrong.
With me today, I have Scott Heaston. He's the CEO of FormClue. And today we'll talk about the risk you're taking with your clients' data and all the stuff you need to know around that. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, Scott, can you tell me, how long have you been doing this? How did the journey start and how did you end up where you are today?
I started in 1999. I was working random jobs and working my way through college and started working at a marketing firm as an intern. And that marketing firm specialized in generating leads all the way back when. And it was a lead gen company that was primarily focused on helping businesses that were in the network marketing and MLM space, companies like Herbalife and Herbalife Nutrition, others. So that was my first introduction to data and understanding just kind of the logistics of what happens when you sign up, where does it go, what do people do with it, and all of the marketing behind it.
When you started working at that company, what are some of the things that you've seen from then that have completely changed from today?
The biggest thing that's changed, in the last 26 years has just been how aggressive marketing has become with SMS, with telemarketing, with data being shared. And kind of the wild card to all of that is the international component, the ability for international marketers to communicate with, anyone, anytime. That never existed back then and has become a big part of the ecosystem, and not really in a good way.
Now, can you tell a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. So, the international component is, data kind of flows freely. There's the European Union and some countries have started adding restrictions to help people with privacy and protect data and consumer information, things like that. But generally speaking, it's still very loose, and anybody's information can be handed off to anybody at any time. And there's bad actors internationally that will, more often than not, they'll pick up the phone, or they'll use systems to dial Americans or Canadians or anybody, and run scams and do things that are they're the bad actors, right? There's not really a lot of good that I've ever seen come out of the international telemarketing world.
When we talk about those scams that happen with international calls, do you have a way to kind of share with us, how does our data get to them?
Yeah, it's really simple. 99% of the time, data brokers will simply take an order from whoever the next customer is that's placing the order. That person will, grab a file of leads or use an API, which is an advanced protocol to just, push data to a CRM or a system somewhere else. And, within 30 seconds, millions of records are handed off to virtually anyone. And it's almost always your full contact information, who you are, where you live. There's something called identity graphs in the marketing world, and identity graphs are basically all of the consumers and all of the information on those consumers. And when you have access to an identity graph, kind of like an Experian, like the credit bureaus, that data is flowing freely right now and can be picked up by anybody, and anybody could decide that they are going to sell that to somebody overseas if they decide to.
Now, when we have this notion, this feels like, wow, this is like 1999. Like, how is it possible in 2026? If someone is, let's say they're not a business owner, they're a regular person, and they have submitted a form to buy something or to acquire about something. They've never given their phone number anywhere. They might have just given an email or something. How would someone get all of that data when they are maybe subscribing just to an Etsy shop or something like that?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I mean, I kind of tell my mom to stop filling out forms generally. Like not she's not really understanding that her data is getting pushed around. But the specific answer to your question is really simple, and it's called data enrichment. So if you just use an email address to sign up on a website right now, there's two things that are happening that you probably aren't aware of. And this happens with your apps on your phone as well. When you sign up for apps on your phone, generally speaking, you're giving them the authority to do whatever they want with your data. But to answer your question, if you sign up with an email address, that email address is going to get pushed to a data pool. And a data pool is where lots of data aggregators will push all of their data so that when they recognize, oh, okay, I have an email address for Scott. Oh, wait, here's his address. Here's his email. Let's append all that. Let's enrich that file. And now you took one data point and you know everything about somebody. And that is the way in a proper world, that's how retargeting works. So, a lot of the companies that are using retargeting to send you ads and display ads to you after you sign up for something, like you might have just visited a website, put in your email to learn how to lose weight, right? Well, you're going to get retargeted immediately, not just because you visited the site, but you went into a data pool. They figured out that that's something you're interested in, and now they have, your entire profile.
When someone starts building these profiles, and let's say someone is listening to it, they're like, look, man, I'm not Google, I'm not Meta, I'm just like a small company that use like Typeforms or something like that.
Yeah.
What are some of the stuff that the businesses on their end are naively doing the wrong thing?
Say that for me one more time.
What do small businesses or medium-sized businesses naively do the wrong thing? What I mean by naively, it's like they don't see any harm in it. They're like, yeah, just of course we have Calendly, or of course we have Typeform, and then you get the quote and so on and so forth.
Okay, so yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, my background is data and compliance. So generally speaking, the problems come into play when you're using like dialing technology. Like the government and the three-letter agencies, they don't like you blindly mass marketing to people. Now, that's not your average small mom and pop shop or your medium-sized business. Generally speaking, those businesses will they'll have forms, and those forms will get filled out by consumers or potential customers, and they will call them back. There's a little bit of a gray area here. Like the government doesn't want to crack down on people who physically pick up a phone and physically dial a number to call a customer. That's not the target, right? So, but more and more businesses are using technology to manage their leads. And technology kind of falls under the umbrella of like automation and automated dialing technology. So any small mom and pop shop or any business that's collecting data, usually they don't have any just basic language that says, hey, we're not going to sell your information, we're going to call you, it's going to be from this name or this company, what we call consumer consent language. And by the letter of the law, technically you should have a checkbox that says, yes, it's okay for you to contact me. Like that's the safe route. The worst case scenario, for that circumstance is that, a consumer decides that they're gonna file a lawsuit against you because you called them and they didn't sign up. They didn't give you the authority to call, and you didn't have the consent language and you didn't have the checkbox and all of the things. So that's kind of where that could lead to if just minor things aren't buttoned up on general forms.
So it sounds like this is more for you're going to do some lead generation, or you are doing SEO to bring in opportunities, and then one of your steps is automated calling. So someone submits a form and they're interested to discover about a quote for something. And then one of the things that happen in that process for that business automatically, without actually picking up a phone or physically dialing it, like automatically goes into a dialer. You need to have proper language, because this is fascinating, interesting to me. It has happened where I filled the form because I wanted to learn about a software, for example. Within minutes, I get a call from someone say, "Hey, Zivko, we saw that you fill out a form."
Yeah.
I don't remember consenting to any of these things, but I just assumed because it happened on a social media platform, for example, that was kind of covered. Is that the case when you're running, let's say, these ads, and you're a business and you're running these ads through these social media platforms, for example? Does the social media platform cover the protection, or do you, as the business owner, need to have all the language on your ad to have the right protection against a lawsuit?
Any website or domain that you specifically control or own, you're responsible. Facebook has provisions, Google has provisions in place to protect the consumer and to make sure that they're aware of what's happening. I mean, they're too big to kind of be willy-nilly about it, right? But anything that you have control over, you have to do. I mean, think about it this way, like, a realtor, I put them in a small business category, but generally speaking, they're all using technology to automate an SMS text message back to somebody that signs up, right? Or that fills out a form. And I mean, it's just part of their business model. And, people kind of get tired of it sometimes if they're not signing up for stuff and getting calls. So you could have a problem, even though it was totally legitimate circumstance, you could still have issues. So just having basic consent language, telling a consumer like, hey, here's what's happening. We're going to call you from this company or this number. It's a really small thing that everybody could do just to protect themselves.
Now, you've done this for quite some time, and you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. What happens? What happens on the other side? What happens if someone is like, "Look, I'm doing all the right stuff, but I have a big target because I'm a big player now. I'm not a small business owner." Let's say it's a real estate agency like yours, or a brokerage. They're like Remax or all these other guys that are big enough, and they just get slapped with lawsuits. How does that look like?
Yeah. So I was a target at one point many years ago because I started working with a website that was really generating a lot of leads. But what happened was a specific law firm had decided that they were going to start signing up and intentionally just fishing to see who would, who they could basically get to pay them money. Ambulance chasers, basically. So what can happen is, you'll get a letter in the mail and via email, basically stating that you violated, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA, or some other rule, depending on what state you're in. And then they'll demand money from you, and they'll demand thousands of dollars. And in that letter, they'll scare you to death, and try to make you think that you're going to lose everything in your life unless you pay them the demand sum. They'll threaten you with lawsuits. They'll threaten you with class action lawsuits. And generally speaking, most people will just say, you know what, I don't even want to risk this. I'm just going to pay the money. And that's what they're betting on. I mean, that's what they're trying to find out. So when you look up statistics for, the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 lawsuits a year that happen from the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, that's just what gets filed. There's probably tens of thousands of people that will pay a fine just so that they don't have to try to, defend themselves, even though they didn't do anything wrong. And it's a game. It's a game for lawyers, and that's what can happen. I mean, you can end up just getting whacked for 10 grand until you've paid a lawyer and paid their demand.
Remember, I think we talked about this like off camera. I remember a day when I was working radio broadcasting. There was a letter that we got from Getty Images, I believe. They claimed that one of the people that worked in the station used an image. I believe it was from an athlete. This was a long time ago, and they just like Googled it, they grabbed it, and they used it for their blog or their post on social media with the tag. And we got a letter for, I think it was around $10,000. When you are the business and you receive something like that, what are the first things that you should be doing?
You have two options. You can ignore it. And if you ignore it, you roll the dice to see if they're just fishing for free money, which is most of the time what they're doing. And if you do ignore it, they're either going to just move on to the next person, the next victim, or they're going to file. And if they file, you retain a lawyer or an attorney that is specializes in this Telephone Consumer Protection Act, TCPA. And then you would go down the kind of the trail of like, okay, well, here's my site, here's what they filled out, here's why I called them, and then from there negotiations begin. It never goes very far unless it's a professional litigator, like that's just, this is their business, is causing, taking these problems and taking them as far as they can go. It's extremely rare that you'll come across that, but it's primarily because when you have litigators that have turned this into their entire business, like this, they try to find these problems and want them. They target specific companies, big companies that have deep pockets. Most medium and small businesses, it'll be $5 or $10,000, that they'll end up having to deal with a problem if one arises.
When we talked about some of these lawsuits in your experience, what happened with you when you were served that lawsuit?
It's kind of the reason that I'm in the business that I'm in right now. So the first one came, and like, I'm human. I started losing sleep. I'm like, started questioning my decisions. I'm like, is the company I'm working with, like, are they doing something they shouldn't be? Like, you have this whirlwind of like anxiety, and that's what they're betting on. That's what they're banking on. So that first one I got was kind of a lump in the throat, stomach drop. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, so the first thing I did was immediately find an attorney, and I went down the normal road of like, okay, here's who we got the lead from. Here's the site, here's all the language. But I was buying the lead from a company that had the proper compliance tools in place. So from there, I took it's a recording of the consumer taking the action. I handed that over, and that's it. It's done. It's indisputable. Like there's no more legitimate way for an attorney to continue, badgering me. Now, have some tried? Yes. We handed over physical evidence, like the company that I have now, right? We handed it over. It was done. And then they said, oh, well, we're filing a nuisance complaint because there was more than 3 calls to the number, even though they signed up, even though they agreed to be called. So these lawyers play these games. It's their business. It's what they do. I don't like it, any more than anybody else. It takes the legitimacy of like actual problems. It puts them into a different scope. But I had that happen 8 times, I think, over the course of a few years when we were working with really, really aggressive volume lead generation companies that do a lot of leads. And none of them ever went anywhere because I had the ability to hand over a recording, the actual like, hey, here's proof of the sign up. Here's the IP address. Here's, them clicking the box. Here's them hitting submit. And when you're an attorney and you watch, you could physically see the action. It can't really go far from there. It's almost dead immediately.
Interesting. Now, this feels a lot more safe and secure. So first of all, let's start from there. Walk us through what are the stuff that you do, that you advise. You're like, it happened to me 8 times, survived every single one of them, no issues. These are the things that my company does, and this is what I do.
That's exactly, yeah. So FormClue was created, we started it many years ago because of these circumstances that we encountered. We didn't really take it to the market until last year, and we took it to the market for, it's a completely different conversation. There's not enough competition in this market. But our company, when you place a snippet of code on your website, just like a pixel, basically, just a snippet of code, copy and paste it on there. Anytime a consumer fills out a form, takes action of any kind, clicks a button, checks a box, what we do is we record that, and then we document it into it, what we call it a certificate, and then we save that for 5 years. Now, we capture all of the information that is publicly available, like their IP address and their all the stuff that you can easily grab, like their computer and so forth. But and then we capture the consent language. If you did write, any language at all, letting the consumer know what they're doing while they're on their site, we capture that, we store it, and then we have a playback recording, just like watching a video. Most people are familiar with the concept of heat mapping, like Hotjar, that company, right? They'll tell you where people are going, what they're doing, all of their actions. We do that, but we do it in a way to protect people that are, that have lead generation, or that are buying leads or generating leads or selling leads.
This is interesting because of that 5-year recording, and I know exactly what you're talking about, like heat maps and Hotjar and stuff like that. When something that was interesting that you mentioned before was, even if bots fill it, you're still liable if you dial. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the language, going back to just basic things that can protect you, just having the right language is like the first step. But a product like ours that will identify bot activity and basically filter it out, or give you the ability to know that it's a bot so you don't call it, you can block it from going to your next step in your marketing process. The reason it's important is because the bad actors that are out there that are creating bots, they don't use fake data to fill out forms. I mean, not the good ones. They usually use real information. They'll use your real name, your address, a phone number, an email that all matches. That's all legitimate. The problem is they're just pulling it from a spreadsheet, and they're just filling out forms to see where they can, get paid for, affiliate marketing or whatever they're doing. So what happens is, you legitimately see a lead come through, all of the data is valid, it's real, it looks real, it is real. You pick up the phone and you call them. Well, that person didn't consent to be called. So bots can cause a problem that's just unintended consequences. So our technology just says, hey, this is probably a bot, you shouldn't call the lead. It's just one more little piece of the puzzle that if you have it, you're just going to sleep better at night.
Interesting. Even it text the bot, so that I didn't know that even if you call a bot, you're still liable because you did the action and all that stuff. Now, what happens when you said you work with a lot of these companies that are generating a high volume of leads, of prospects calling, dialing in and stuff like that? Probably that expands outside of the borders of the US. What happens with international laws?
Yes, it does. It does, but not nearly as much as you would expect. Most companies will stick within the borders of America if they're targeting America. The European Union has very strict and specific rules on what data is allowed to be stored or sent in or out of their servers. It really had a big impact on Google, Facebook, and many of the larger marketing companies, because the European Union said, oh, okay, well, we're creating our own set of rules that now makes it very difficult for anybody to do anything with moving, data around on the users. And that's, generally speaking, that's their entire business model, right? Like is your data and serving you things that you might like. So there is a little bit of cross, but there's really not a lot. I mean, Canada started really clamping down a few years back on email marketing. They didn't want people in America sending emails to Canadians anymore because they were basically spamming, right? Or what their definition of spam. The definition in America is, a little bit different or more broad or loose, but Australia, same thing. So 9 times out of 10, you don't really ever have to have concern about international rules or laws. If you do the right thing with consumer consent and consumer language, you're probably going to be covered either way. It's when consumers are like getting blasted, or called, in a, just an aggressive way that, people aren't signing up for things. Like that's the true, root of the issue.
I remember when the Can Spam Act, I think that's what it was called when it came into play in Canada, and it was the double opt-in, and it was like double opt-in. That is,
Yeah.
you need to be like super sure you want this. Like no one's gonna sign up for anything because I think the way that you're explaining the issue is out of nowhere, I am getting pitched or email for things that I have no idea what they are, that they even existed, and it's because of through like these buying and selling the data. It's not that it's someone that I talked with called me 10 times. It's more that it was out of the blue, out of nowhere. I don't even know who this company is and what they're doing, and you start getting spammed in that definition.
Yeah, I mean, SMS has gotten completely out of control. Text messages, and only this year has, at least in America, the government has figured out how to rein it in. The international issues continue with telemarketing, and the issues are in America too with telemarketing. But at the end of the day, my life of compliance is, it's going to help people that are going to try and do the right thing. And there's always going to be bad actors, and everyone's going to be fighting that fight forever. I just want to be in a position of like, hey, if somebody wants to do the right thing and protect themselves, I can help.
That's right. You mentioned in your first experience that you were able to protect yourself because you showed that you bought the leads from a company that did the right things. What are some of the red flags if someone wants to buy data or if they're buying leads? What are some of the red flags that you should definitely stay away from that one?
Yeah, the number one question to ask. I mean, a lot of people buy data; they buy leads. I mean, just it's unbelievably common, right? So it's so expensive to generate leads on your own that a lot of people start looking for like where can I buy this type of lead, and then they Google it. Now they're talking to companies. The number one question you need to ask, the only real question that you need to ask is, what compliance do you have on your forms? And if you do, can you provide me that certificate with that lead? And that certificate, so Zivkov, like if you're buying leads, you could take that certificate, you could look it up, and you could see if your company's listed on the form as someone who's an approved company to contact that customer. So you could do audits yourself. You can physically see like, hey, I'm good, like everything's fine. But anybody that buys leads, that's the only question you need to ask is, do you have compliance on your forms so that the consumer actions are being recorded and stored for 5 years?
So you're basically looking for the compliance language that I have on the form, if they can send you the certificate as well to confirm that this is how they are collecting leads and you're buying because they have done all the right steps, as opposed to God knows from where, and then you're liable.
Yeah. I mean, the compliance language is essential, but it doesn't carry a lot of water unless you have the recording, unless you have a certificate from a compliance company like mine, right? Because a lawyer could just say that you changed it. There's a lot of ways to argue that. But if there's a recording, if you're buying leads and you're like, hey, do you use FormClue? Do you use whatever, type of company? If the answer is not yes, you shouldn't buy the lead. I mean, you can go buy, and you can buy data from anywhere right now and they'll sell it to you. But more often than not, it's just not compliant.
Not compliant. Now, when it comes to, I guess this is us aging ourselves a little bit more. The do not contact list. That was a thing that, when it happened, like everybody was like, my goodness, this is a fantastic idea. Then with time, I kept hearing that maybe this was a myth, and this is just what I heard. Don't put yourself on the do not contact list is actually the easiest way to get contacted, because like you're giving someone a list. What do you see around the do not contact list nowadays?
In the marketing world, almost nobody wants to use it. When companies get big enough, they use it because they know they're a target. But generally speaking, nobody wants to use it purely because the current price for a company to have access to the government updated list, it's I think it's $19,000 a year. So if the government had a more reasonable rate, a lot of companies would probably use it, right? And stay compliant. But they've made it hard and expensive to use. So people just choose not to use it unless they're a big company. They're just like, I'm not going to do it. So there are some a la carte companies where you can run data through, and they have a license, and they'll clean your data for you. Like those tools exist, but and you should use them if you're concerned. Like, but the do not call list is like, it's almost worthless, not completely.
It's a list. At least it has some benefit.
I mean, it's a government program. It's just not optimized. Most things aren't optimized. If it was optimized and someone spent time caring, it would go a lot further. It would do a lot more good. It's just not doing as much good as it could.
See, Scott, is there something that we should have covered but we didn't?
I don't think so. It's just, leads aren't going away. Marketing is only going to, be more and more vital. And I think it's going to be more challenging with AI and some of the stuff that we're seeing. The reality is, like, there's really small things that you can do that have a really big impact, and like very minimal cost, like very minimal form clue. I mean, just as an example, like, we'll save a cert for 5 years for $0.015, depending on where you're at, like with us. And, that's a reasonable way to protect yourself, and to just sleep better at night. So everyone needs leads. Everyone's going to use them. It's just, if you're going to do it, just take a little extra time to care about what you're doing.
Right. I think that's the right approach. What you're saying, it's the little efforts will have a massive impact, and it's not a difficult thing to do those little things that are the right ones and combine together. Now, if someone listens to this whole thing and they're like, "This is really interesting. I want to kind of protect myself a little bit better," how do people get a hold of you to work with you?
The easiest way is to go to our site, which is formclue.io, formclue.io. And then we've got a little Calendly button on there. You can book time with me. I'll explain it. We've got all of the resources in place to make it really easy for people that that are interested, or that it makes sense for their model.
Fantastic, Scott. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate you sharing all these things with us, and it's good to know that it's simple things that we can put in place. They're not too difficult. You can protect yourself, and once you get big enough, these lawsuits, they will just kind of be like they'll be part of your day. So might as well do the right thing to protect them, to protect yourself, and move forward with these. So I appreciate the time. Thank you so much for sharing all these things, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you, brother. Great talking to you.